A historic invitation to the North from the Supreme Leader himself. Kim Jong Un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, made an unprecedented visit to South Korea's presidential Blue House on Saturday. In her hand, a personal message from her brother. Kim Jong Un has asked South Korean President Moon Jae-in to meet in North Korea, the first time leaders of the two countries would meet face-to-face in more than a decade. Reuters Korea Bureau Chief So-young Kim reports.
North Korea could be hoping that South Korea resumes once profitable economic cooperation projects that had been shuttered by Seoul's previous conservative governments because they are scouring for sources of funding. And they would also want South Korea to cancel jointly planned military exercises with the United States that the two countries were planning to go ahead post the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics.
It would also mark the first time a South Korean leader has stepped foot in the North since 2007. Any meeting between the two would be a win for Moon, who's been pushing for peaceful engagement with his northern neighbors. But the news might not go down well in Washington.
Experts say it's the strongest attempt yet by North Korea to try to drive a wedge between Seoul and Washington. That relationship is already under stress because Seoul is frustrated with Washington's talk of military options on the Korean Peninsula, whereas Washington is frustrated that Seoul is being too soft on North Korea.
This comes as UN sanctions continue to squeeze the isolated regime as punishment for its nuclear and missiles program. It's not clear yet when or if the visit will happen, but so far, Moon's administration has been hinting that it just might. In any case, North Korea will be waiting. Kim Yo-jong has said she looks forward to meeting Moon in Pyongyang.
You're watching Reuters TV. Here are your top stories.
A historic invitation from Kim Jong Un.
Tensions escalate in the Middle East after Syria shoots down an Israeli warplane.
Sexual abuse victims take the stage at New York Fashion Week.
This is Reuters Now.
Israel has launched heavy airstrikes in Syria after an Israeli warplane was shot down on Saturday by Syrian anti-aircraft fire. Israel said the F-16 crashed during a mission to strike Iranian drone installations in Syria. It said that operation came after it shot down an Iranian drone which was flying over Israeli airspace earlier on Saturday. These images of the downed Israeli fighter jet show what appears to be aircraft debris scattered on the ground where the plane came down in northern Israel. The pilot was taken to hospital but is reported to be safe. Iranian and Iran-backed forces have established a major foothold in Syria, fighting in support of Syria's president, Bashar al-Assad. The military alliance denied that any of its drones had entered Israeli airspace, but the Israeli military has since released this footage of aerial targeting in Syria, which it says shows the destruction of a drone flying in Israeli airspace. Syrian state news agency Sana say that Syrian air defences were responding to a new Israeli aggression. It's a major escalation of tension in the region. The Russian Foreign Ministry has called on all sides to exercise restraint. An Israeli military spokesman says Israel is not looking to escalate the situation.
The Northern League once derided southern Italy as a crime-riddled parasitic wasteland. Now the far-right party sees it as fertile ground for votes. Gianluca Cantalamessa is standing for the Northern League in Herculaneum in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius in the March 4th election. He's open about the party's anti-immigrant stance.
We've been speaking out against this for years. The fact that there are Neapolitans living in cheap housing on the 12th floor without a lift, and people arrive who stay in 4-star hotels and have their toothbrushes and toothpaste changed every week, when not even I change my toothbrush every week.
Cantalamessa says his party's platform of more jobs for Italians is winning over Southerners. Unemployment and poverty are much higher than in the north. Polls suggest Cantalamessa will be among the first crop of Northern League candidates to win in the south.
I will vote for the League because we are fed up with the left. We need to turn to something else, something new.
In the last parliamentary election in 2013, the League won just 4% of the vote. Now it's part of a coalition that includes the party of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi.
A post-Brexit transition period is not a given, the latest warning from the European Union's Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier. Speaking in Brussels after the latest round of negotiations, he said London had raised substantial issues with the plan proposed by the bloc.
We had agreed with the British team on an agenda this week covering Ireland, the governance of the withdrawal agreement, and of course the transition. We'd also planned an update by the UK on the future relationship. That update couldn't take place as planned this morning due to a scheduling issue on the UK's side.
It comes just a day after Theresa May also received a stark warning from Japan. May met bosses from Japanese businesses, including Nissan, SoftBank and Nomura, to discuss their concerns over trade barriers after Brexit.
If there is no profitability of continuing operation in UK, not Japanese only, no private company can continue operation.
Profitability also weighing on the shoulders of one of Britain's biggest mortgage providers. Profits fell 6% at Nationwide Building Society in the 9 months to the end of December, thanks to a fall in consumer spending since the country's vote to leave the EU. It's one of the strongest indications yet from a major lender of Brexit's impact, and a lack of progress in talks isn't helping. Sterling weakened against the euro as Barnier listed London's issues with the 2-year transition period. These range from EU citizens' rights to the rules Britain must adhere to for access to the single market during the 2 years.
And I was surprised by it, but we certainly wish him well.
The president making his first public comments over the resignation of a high-level staffer accused of beating 2 of his ex-wives. Rob Porter's exit is just the latest in a string of headline-making departures from the Trump administration. For instance, in this picture alone, in addition to Rob Porter, Sebastian Gorka, an advisor with ties to the far right, resigned in August. Anthony Scaramucci lasted only a few days as communications chief after a profanity-laced interview sent him packing. Omarosa Manigault was fired in December and is now airing her grievances on a reality TV show. And of course, Corey Lewandowski didn't even make it to the White House as he was fired during the campaign. Or how about this one? Michael Flynn ousted as national security advisor for lying to Mike Pence about his contacts with Russians. Also gone, Sean Spicer, Reince Priebus, and Steve Bannon, who Trump recently said had lost his mind. Steve Holland covers the White House for Reuters and traces these staffing problems to the first days of the administration.
Remember, not many people really wanted to work for Donald Trump. He came to office. He didn't really expect to win, so his team had to scramble to put together a group of top advisors. Most of these advisors don't have deep political Washington experience, so perhaps they didn't vet these people as deeply as perhaps they should have. Donald Trump is a celebrity president in many ways, and he brought that sort of culture to the White House, so it is an unusual soap opera-like presidency that we're seeing unfold day in and day out, and there never seems to be a let-up to it.
And late Friday, it was announced that a second administration official had resigned over allegations of domestic abuse, that being David Sorensen, a speechwriter. Chief of Staff John Kelly was supposed to be the man to bring some order to this chaotic crew, but instead has been the center of a few controversies himself. Now he's under fire for what he did or didn't know about Porter's domestic abuse allegations. As for the president, he's giving Porter the benefit of the doubt.
Remember that. He said very strongly yesterday that he's innocent.
It was a shallow grave dug for 10 Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. The captives watched their Buddhist neighbors dig it. These 3 photos were given to Reuters by a Rakhine Buddhist village elder and show key moments before and after the 10 Rohingyas' execution near the village of Indin. 2 of the gravediggers exclusively told Reuters at least 2 of the victims were hacked to death by villagers. The rest were shot by Myanmar army troops. It's just one bloody episode in a wave of ethnic violence that sent nearly 690,000 Rohingya Muslims fleeing the country. However, it's the first ever reconstructed with photos and testimony not only from victims, but Rakhine Buddhist villagers themselves. In addition, paramilitary police officers gave the first insider descriptions of operations to drive out the Rohingya, confirming that the military played the lead role in the campaign in Indin. The investigation of the Indin massacre is what prompted the arrest of 2 Reuters journalists, Wa Lone and Cho So-u. Reuters' Simon Lewis went to the Balokhali refugee camp in Bangladesh and found family members of the victims who confirmed parts of the stories from the paramilitary police.
The accounts that we're getting here, and through matching those up with what we're hearing from the other side of the border, we're able to get a pretty good account for the first time of exactly what happened in this village. In fact, what we found is that the army themselves cooperated with local Buddhists to burn the villages and also to kill Muslim villagers, summarily executing them, as we found in one particular case.
On January 10th, prosecutors applied the charge Hua Lon and Cho So-u under the Official Secrets Act, which carries a maximum 14-year jail sentence. Witnesses contradict the Army's account of events issued the same day in important respects. The military says the 10 men were part of a group of 200 terrorists that attacked security forces. Villagers reported no such attack by insurgents. Rohingya witnesses revealed more details.
The Rohingya family members from Indin that we've spoken to have described how, as they were fleeing their village with fires breaking out around Indin, they were camped out on a beach and security forces came, picked out 10 men apparently at random and led them away back to the village. The families told us they never saw those men again.
Interviews with scores of villagers, soldiers, and police revealed more. Over a dozen villagers say the military organized Buddhist residents of Indin to torch Rohingya homes, though officials have blamed Rohingya insurgents for burning villages. One village official says some members of the police looted Rohingya property in order to sell it. And police officers say in order to, quote, clear Indin's Rohingya hamlets was passed down the chain of command from the military. They also say security forces wore civilian clothes to avoid detection during raids. In response, a Myanmar government spokesman told Reuters, quote, "We're not denying the allegations about violations of human rights, and we're not giving blanket denials." And he added, "If we found the evidence is true and the violations are there, we'll take the necessary action according to our existing law." A police spokesman also told Reuters he knew of no instances of security forces torching villages or wearing civilian clothing, but that the reports would be checked and scrutinized. The Army did not respond to a request for comment.
The Winter Olympics, a stage for global athletes, selfie-worthy snowshots, and big business. Chinese e-commerce firm Alibaba has kicked off its Olympic sponsorship deal at the Pyeongchang Games in South Korea, pushing a project to create so-called smarter athletes' villages and to try and make the Olympics themselves more cost-effective. Of course, a bit more international exposure to punters and watching audiences won't hurt. Reuters' Leanna Baker attended the launch.
Alibaba has signed on to be an Olympic sponsor for more than 10 years, and this was their debut, so they wanted it to be really flashy. Jack Ma was here, the chairman and founder, along with the IOC president Thomas Bach, and they even had Yao Ming, the former basketball star, in the audience. So they really wanted to pack a punch with some IOC members as well, and even the mayor of Beijing. Alibaba has big changes in mind as the cloud provider and the e-commerce provider for the Olympics. But I think some of their changes are going to be really hard to actually put into effect because the IOC is bureaucratic, it's a large organization, there's other sponsors Alibaba will have to work with, so it may take many years to make these changes that Alibaba wants, although they seem to be moving fast.
The fashion industry never shied to tackle controversial issues on the runway. Sexual abuse victims dressed with angel wings, fur, and tiaras strutted their stuff at a New York Fashion Week show inspired by the Me Too movement. But the attention wasn't just on fashion. Models walked down the aisle next to handcuffed males wearing pig masks. And then one by one, the women were passed the mic to share their personal sexual abuse stories.
At 13, I was groomed and lured from my home by a vicious internet predator who kidnapped me and held me captive in his basement dungeon, chained by the neck. He shared this abuse, this torture, online. He live streamed it. And there were those out there who watched it and drew pleasure from my pain.
My name is Cheyenne. I'm a survivor of sexual misconduct, rape, and sexual assault. This is unfortunately the reality that we're living in, and I'm very glad that we're finally speaking out and hearing about these stories.
The show was the brainchild of American Wardrobe's creative director, Miriam Chalik.
It's New York Fashion Week. Why not, use that attention that is concentrated on this week to send a message, convey a message of, empowerment and raising awareness about, sexual misconduct.
Women and some men throughout the world used the Me Too movement, founded by Tarana Burke, as a rallying cry to expose sexual misconduct in various industries, including media, politics, and fashion.
Because the time is up.
Some of the accused have either been fired or resigned.
You're up to date. Check back later as stories develop.